Okay, so we're going to continue on the databases here for the hands-on. And what I'm going to do is basically go down to the end here, and there's create a high availability database using Amazon Aurora. So I put some um, I've put some videos here, YouTube videos into basically what it actually is Aurora, and what it's really kind of used
Let's
for,
talk about Amazon Aurora.
about high scalability and high availability. So basically, what we're just going to kind of do is we're going to look at this tutorial here. So you, in this tutorial, learn how to create or to configure Aurora cluster to create a high availability database. High availability database consists multiple nodes replicated across multiple AZs to gain increased read scalability and failover protection. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to put that into um, the notes here. Save that. Okay, so let's kind of start. Obviously, you can kind of read through exactly what we'll kind of be doing here, but the first thing I want to kind of do is I want to log into my Amazon here. I'm going to go in as the root user for the moment, and I want to sort of say, okay, enter the ODS console. So I need to go to the ODS console, which is here. And you can sort of see I have no databases, zero databases actually here at the moment. So it sort of says open the ODS database, which we did. Create an Aurora cluster. In this step, you'll create Aurora cluster. So go into database, create database, create database. I wondered if I change that back to Europe here. Create database. Okay, I'm just going to do for Europe. Um, so on the select engine page, select standard, go to Aurora. So basically we go to Aurora, we go to standard Aurora. Now slightly just different here. So this says just do a kind of Aurora here, so you can do MySQL compatible or PostgreSQL. So it looks like they've basically kind of divided this up, but I'm just going to do Aurora here for the moment. Enter name for the DB cluster, username and password. I'm just going to use master username. I'm just going to use the same details that we did in the last video, because it just kind of for quickness. So let's sort of see database one. So I'm just going to do master username. So I'm just going to take this here, go in here, select that. That's okay. Production. So database here can be database one. They seem to have left it at database one. Credentials here. You can put master database password here. I'm obviously using the same username and password, which is not good practice, but purely for quickness. Burstable and availability. Don't create Aurora replication. So go in here, burstable, and don't create Aurora replication here. Okay, so just for this, you don't need to actually create Aurora replication. Okay. You will now configure your database. Leave your default settings for capacity type, DB engine. On the DB instance, you're going to select T2 small. So DB2 T2 small, DB T2. Do we not get that option anymore? Doesn't look like actually you get that option anymore. Doesn't look like you actually get that T2 DB.T2 option. Doesn't look like you actually get um, that small, but we saw it in the previous video. We saw it in the previous video here. So it doesn't look like, it looks like that if you kind of default for major version, so it does look like here now you can only actually select that that um, that medium size, but that's okay. We're going to delete this database straight after anyway. So under multi-AZ deployment, select no. So don't create Aurora replication. Now, the many advanced topics for Amazon RDS for the purposes of tutorials. Simply disable the delete protection option and leave the rest. So just leave the rest here. Security group, choose existing. Create new. Security group here. Looks like it doesn't give us those options here as part of the tutorial. So select public access no. I'm going to pick yes for the minute. So the default VPC, default subnet group, new existing. So this is just going to be RDS, like we did the last time. Test database SG. That's fine. No availability zone we don't need. Certificate we don't need for the moment. Turn on forwarding database. IAM database authentication. This is what we kind of did before. Authenticates using IAM database authentication. Several months monitoring. The estimated monthly costs for this would be $64. So the kind of options that I've kind of chosen here, it would be $64 because if I turn on public access, so here it sort of said public access, it didn't say. When it came down here, yeah, so there was nothing about kind of public access, anything kind of like that. But what's kind of driving up the cost here must be the fact that we basically have, we must have this, you know. So it says burstable classes, definitely use burstable classes, and T too small. So we're kind of doing exactly what we're meant to be doing here, but it just means that we just have to be kind of careful that we kind of just delete this. So this, it sort of says there's many different options. Delete protection. The new Aurora instance appears in this database in the RDS console. DB instance will have a status created until it's ready for use and available. Okay. Create the Aurora for high availability. Every Aurora instance comes with strong data protection by default. You can increase compute availability by adding read replicas and different AZs within the AWS region. Up to 15 Aurora replicas can be distributed across the AZs in the DB cluster spans with region. Okay, so in the ODS console, the primary, the write instance in our Aurora cluster will be listed in databases. Select the instance name and take note of the availability zone under networking. Okay, so really we first of all have to kind of continue on and make sure that we have our create database. And when that's ready, I'm going to come back to the video. Okay, so our database is nearly up and running. So basically if I go in here and go to databases here, you can sort of see that, let me just refresh this, make sure it's the latest. You can see that basically database 1 is available. Database instance 1 is still creating, and this is the cluster, this is the regional cluster role, and this is the writer instance. So this is where, you know, we're basically going to start to distribute this database into multiple AZs. So what we can do here, I'm going to ignore this for the moment. What we can do here is kind of read through these kind of notes while the end of the database is actually getting ready. So we've done up to here, and basically what this is just sort of saying, just keep refreshing the page until you see your database online. But it says here, step 4, every Amazon Aurora instance comes with strong data protection by default. You can increase compute availability by adding read replicas in different AZs within an AWS region. Up to 15 replicas can be distributed across AZs. Okay, so in the ODS console, the writer instance in our Aurora cluster will be listed in databases. So that's exactly what we sort of see, the writer instances here. Then it says select the instance name and take note of availability under networking. So select the instance name and take a note of the networking availability zone, which is this for me. Okay. Select the radio button for the cluster. So here we have to select the radio button for the cluster itself. So we have to kind of go back here. We have to select this radio button. Go back here. Oh, go back here. Go to actions. And it says add reader. So here you're going to add a reader basically. So select the radio button for the cluster and create the Aurora replica by selecting actions add reader. Select a different AZ from the primary. Okay, so a different AZ. So here replica source is going to be that's going to be fine. Burstable, same idea. Availability zone. So we're going to put this in A this time. IAM database authentication. We're just going to do exactly the same. Going to set it all to be exactly the same. Yep. So we're going to set it all to be exactly the same, and then basically public accessible. We're just making that yes for the minute because we're just testing. Yeah, so basically when you want to actually add a reader, you just have to kind of reuse the same settings that you basically did. All you're basically doing is creating it in a different AZ. You'll sort of see that replica. So let's say add reader, DB instance identifier. DB identifier. We can just sort of say test reader for the minute, just to sort of see test reader. It's fine just for the minute. All of that stays the same, and then kind of add reader. And now we can basically sort of see that in our cluster here we have a writer instance which is still being created, and then we have a reader instance which is in a different AZ. So you can sort of see here it basically sort of says that this instance was in 1B, this is in 1A. So they're exactly the same default networking zones and all of that kind of sort of stuff. So it's exactly the kind of sort of same. So what we just have to kind of do is just make sure that we would wait for this to kind of stand up, and this sort of says configure and enhance monitoring basically as well. So it successfully created database 1, and now it's just basically creating this instance 1, and it sort of says configure and enhance monitoring. This one for the test reader, it's basically still in creating stage. So we're getting a reader and writer that basically sort of says it's writing to this, and this one is reading, which is the replica. So that kind of makes sense. Okay. So it says you have successfully achieved high availability on the compute layer. Next, we will test the failover process. So here, let's sort of see. It says to increase high availability, you can use Aurora replicas as failover targets. If the primary instance fails, so let's look at a diagram here. If the primary instance, so the primary instance is this one here, this instance 1. If that fails, Aurora replica is promoted to the primary instance. Replicas are used for both scalability and availability. In the step, you would set up priority order of replica used for the failover. So select the radio button for the reader instance and select modify during the failover or the swap mode a replica. So let's just sort of see here. So for your reader instance, let's just select the reader instance actions. Okay. So here you can sort of see you could actually delete it, you could fail over. So, here you could basically, do multiple kind of things here. Let's sort of see. So what we're going to do here is select the radio button next to your reader and select modify. Now, there's no modify button anymore from what I sort of see here. So if I go to here, because it's grayed out, and it's grayed out basically because it's still being created basically. So that's the reason why it's actually not. But if I kind of select this one here, I could go into modify here. I could modify it here, set up a new database password. I could check all of this. I could do all this kind of sort of stuff here, here, and here. You sort of see down here, this here, the failover options basically. So you can sort of say, okay, so the failover priority is here. So it's actually in here, the database options. So you can kind of come into the failover priority here. So it says during a failover, ODS will promote the replica with the highest priority. So the highest priority is starting at 0, starting with tier 0, to become the new primary instance. In this example, we do not have any existing replicas, so we will set the highest priority failover to 0. Okay, so as the kind of screenshot sort of says, basically what you're doing here is you can select the databases that you actually want. You can configure the failover. So basically sort of says, okay, the first database is going to be 0, the next database is going to be 1. And if 0 fails, 1, the database that's configured with 1 will basically take over. So here it sort of says, actions failover. You can test the failover here. You can test the failover. Do you want to kind of test the failover? I'm not going to basically do that because I think if I kind of go here, if I refresh here, so the test reader is still not kind of up and running. So you'd basically have to wait for, this reader instance. So if I'm understanding correctly, the database gets written to this one here, and then the reader instance reads. Now, if this writer goes down, you basically have to configure this to be, 1, to sort of say this is going to be tier 1. So basically, this is the next one that will basically take over. Because if I look at here, the modified, this one here is set to be failover of 1 at the moment. So this one here is 1. So instance 1 is 1. And here I just can't kind of, modify this because it's basically not ready to be modified. But basically just have to kind of play around with that and have it like a kind of type of dummy data, dummy database. You're setting your tiers, but that's really kind of it, and then basically all it's sort of saying is, terminate your instances here, terminate kind of everything, and make sure that everything is kind of deleted back off. So that is Aurora database. It does looks to be really, really nice on how they've actually done this and how easy they can make it. What I'd suggest is, if you were to do this for real in some type of production environment, you take your time, make sure that you kind of, have your tiers set, make sure that, you test the failover. So failover between 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, back to 2, back to 1, and make sure that all of that kind of is working, and make sure that you can also connect over to your database as well, as part of that kind of failover. So when you fail over, make sure that you can still connect to your database. So that's it for Amazon Aurora.